Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Beef Up Front podcast here on PickSwap Media. Your host, Ryan Coyle, as always, joined alongside Joe Kometz for our weekly Thursday night college basketball picks and preview show. We'll be going over the best games of the weekend on Friday and Saturday and diving into some betting, talking some big pictures with some teams, and going over the top 10 games of this weekend. We're full-fledged college basketball mode now with the national title game on Monday behind us, and we're ready to dive in. And before we know it, Joe, we're going to be up in the Poconos for March Madness. So as always, welcome back. And how are we?
Fantastic, Coyle. Can't wait for that March Madness. Up in the Poconos. Already have the whole weekend and Monday to recover off from work. Planning accordingly. Like you said, full college basketball mode. Super Tuesday was great. Right after the national title game, just sitting watching games all day and all night. And you've had already since the national title game, numbers 1, 2, 3, and 5 have all lost this week on the road. There's nothing beats college basketball. It's the most unpredictable sport. It's the hardest to determine, who's going to be the champion at the end of it, and that's why I love it. And we got a great show for you. Let's dive right in.
Yeah, I saw on Twitter earlier. This was the first time in AP poll history that 4 of the top 5 teams lost in a span of 2 days. So that just goes to show you how wild, really, the beginning of conference play for most of these teams has been. And a really popular trend that we've seen so far is ranked teams going to unranked teams on the road and dropping those games, not just against the spread, but outright as well. So it's going to be something to keep an eye on, certainly, for the rest of the year. Thursday night stream, we don't really have much tonight. A couple of Pac-12 games, UCLA, Utah is one of them, but not that many great games. The Pac-12, as we know, is pretty down this year outside of Arizona at the top. So we go right to Friday night, and we're starting with a mid-major game with the Mountain West. And the Mountain West, Joe, has a real chance to potentially get 5 teams in the tournament this year, which would be a banner year for the conference. You have Boise State at 11-4 going to Nevada tomorrow, who's 15-1, a 10:30 tip on FS1. Haslam Metrics projecting this one as a Nevada win, 73-66. We'll go Nevada minus 6.5, over under 138.5. Joe, does the Wolfpack protect the home floor in this game?
I believe they do, Coyle. And I kind of alluded to it at the beginning of the show, having all these top tier teams going on the road and losing. It's very hard to go on the road and win, especially in college basketball. Coyle, we've had the conversation before. I think basketball as a sport is the most important to get your home, core, like home court advantage or home field advantage, whatever, depending on the sport. I think being at home matters most in the sport of basketball, especially college basketball. I think Nevada's going to win this game 68-63. So I'll take Boise to cover the 6.5. And I'm going under 138.5. I think it's going to be a defensive game. And Cole, you were kind of saying about the Mountain West. You look 5, maybe even 6 teams right now have pretty solid records. You have New Mexico 13-3. Colorado State's ranked. They're 1-2 to start the league play. They're 13-3. You have Boise and Nevada, who we're talking about. Then you have San Diego State and Utah State, both top 25 teams as well. You have 6 teams that could potentially be there at the end of the season. Awesome for the Mountain West, getting a lot of respect. San Diego State did make it to the title game out of this conference last year.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, UConn beat them. It's crazy. We had a San Diego State Florida Atlantic Final Four game.
And they're on a buzzer beater.
Yeah, crazy. I forgot my wallet that day. Xfinity Live. Give me the Wolfpack in this game.
Yeah, as we were talking about, it looks like this is going to be a multi-bid conference. Boise, Nevada, San Diego State, New Mexico, Colorado State, all looking like potential tournament teams. So I think as long as those 5 teams take care of all the other non-tournament teams out of the Mountain West in their home games and on the road games as well, and then when you just play against these other group of 5 teams, you have to win the home matchups in this one. Like Nevada 15-1, still a great record, but who did they really beat this year? They don't really have that enticing of a resume. So when you get a chance to beat another potential team like Boise State at home, I think you have to do so. And I think there's going to be a major emphasis on that in this game. I haven't watched much of these teams this year, but I know the Wolfpack, from watching them a couple of times, can score. They're putting up 78 a game. I expect them to protect their home floor in this one and outscore Boise State in a bit of a high-scoring matchup. I'm going to go 75-65. So Nevada minus 6.5, and I'll take the over of 138.5. All right, we go to Saturday. This might be the game I'm most intrigued to see. Very intrigued to see St. John's and Creighton as well, but I really want to see what this Georgia team is made of. You have number 5 Tennessee at 11-4, coming off a loss last night to Mississippi State, going to Athens to play 12-3 Georgia, coming off a win over Arkansas last night. A 12 o'clock tip off on ESPN2. Haslam's projecting a Tennessee 74-67 win, so we'll go Tennessee minus 6.5 over under 140.5. Can Georgia get that resume boosting win that they really need, Joe?
I don't think they can, Coil, just because of the fact that Tennessee is coming off a loss. I'm going Tennessee 78, Georgia 69, so I'll take Tennessee to cover that 6.5. I'm going to go over the 140.5. I think Tennessee is going to, be playing angry after a rough showing against a Mississippi State team, that was unranked. But I think, especially after this week, I think Mississippi State is going to be a tournament team come, season's end. Georgia, I don't know yet. They have a good record, 12-3. You look at their losses; they don't have any bad losses. So they've kind of, done their job in terms of, beating who they're supposed to beat. Beat two lower, tier SEC teams with Missouri and Arkansas to start off the year. Kind of like I was saying last week with a couple of games, this is going to tell me a lot about Georgia going forward. If they can keep this close, I think the Bulldogs might be a sleeper team to make the tournament. If they, lose by 8 or more, which I think they're going to, I think they're going to lose by 9. Georgia might be that team that beats, the lower tier teams in the SEC, loses to the upper tier teams. They'll be that 8-9 seed in the SEC tournament, maybe play a close game, but I don't think they'll be able to make the tournament. I just don't think they'll be able to keep it close with Tennessee. A lot of talent, as much as I hate to say, with Tennessee basketball. I think they'll get it done.
Yeah, I think this, looking up and down the schedule, like this game might mean the most to any team that we're going to talk about, this Georgia team, in terms of just getting that big resume win that they're really looking for right now. Huge opportunity. They're only 82nd in the net, and they're 0-1 in quad one. So they have the chance to get arguably the biggest resume building win of the weekend here. Because Tennessee, despite what we say about them from time to time, they're still widely respected always by the computer models. They're the 5th team in the net right now. So can they do it? Can they get that big time win? I don't see Tennessee dropping 2 in a row, though. We talked about this before where this Tennessee team is different than other Tennessee teams we've seen because this team has some guards that can go out there and actually score the basketball, and they're not too reliant on defense. Even though they lost last night, they still put up over 70 points, and we usually don't see that from Tennessee teams before. So I think going forward, this is going to be a Tennessee team that, who knows, at come March, they might be like a 5 seed or something. They might drop some SEC games. But I think it's going to benefit them come March, and they're actually best suited to make their run. Mississippi State, a very good, underrated team, and they were able to knock off Tennessee in a really tough matchup at home. So I think Tennessee is able to come back, bounce back in this one. I just don't think Georgia is quite there yet. So I'm going to go with Tennessee to win and to cover. I'm going to go Tennessee 70, Georgia 62, Tennessee minus 6.5, and the under of 140.5. All right, another game with a team that's probably going to be floating around the bubble for most of the year with Syracuse at 11-4. Traveling to number 7, North Carolina at 12-3. Another noon tip on ESPN. UNC projected to win this one at Haslam, 81-65. So go UNC minus 15.5, over under 145.5.
Yeah, I'm going to go UNC 81, Syracuse 73. I'll take Syracuse to cover the 15.5. I am going over 145.5. I'm not going to get, as bold as last week when I said I'd sell my house with Ole Miss. Thankfully, I didn't because I'd be homeless right now. Ole Miss, if that was the actual number. Then I think the week before I said I don't think Notre Dame's going to score 45, and they beat Virginia by like 20 points, something like that. But I think UNC is going to win this game. I think Armando Bacot, who, even though he's a very good player, I always forget he's there. He's turning into like a more skilled Perry Ellis. He's been there forever. I think he's going to have a big game. I think UNC is going to be able to control the glass and kind of suffocate Syracuse out here. So give me the Tar Heels at home with ease, no problems.
Yeah, I'm with you where I would be surprised to see if the number is actually this big. I think maybe more so like an 11.5, 12-point spread. But I do expect UNC to win this game fairly comfortably. I actually locked North Carolina in on a future at plus 2,800 last night to win the title. I think this squad is legit, and the best in the ACC. I have them a peg above Duke right now, but I think the ACC is really down this year, really going to struggle. So UNC is going to be able to cement themselves as a potential 1 or 2 seed and really have a favorable path to the Final Four. Syracuse needs a resume win badly. They've struggled against the top tier teams that they've played. They're only 1-4 in their quad one games, but I just don't think going to Chapel Hill is the spot to get that win. If there's a return game back to Syracuse, I think they're going to be able to pick off some teams at the Dome this year, but I just don't see a Syracuse team like this as of this moment going down to Chapel Hill and beat North Carolina. Do I think that Syracuse can become a tournament team come March? Yes, but will it be a bubble team for most of the season? Most likely, yes, as well. I think UNC has shown us great versatility this year. They can win a defensive game, they can win an up-tempo game, and they can win in a variety of ways. So love their versatility, and I think that's why you should buy some long-term stock in them right now. And with them being at home, one of the best home court advantages, I'll take them to win. But I will take Syracuse to cover the 15.5. I'll go 75-64, Syracuse plus 15.5 and under 145.5. All right, third game, arguably one of the big surprise teams in college basketball thus far, at least in my eyes, is Wisconsin. But you have Northwestern at 12-3, also a bit of a surprise team traveling to number 15, Wisconsin, 12-3. Noon tip on Big Ten Network. We have a projection of Wisconsin 75-64. So we'll go Wisconsin minus 10.5 and the over-under 138.5.
This is a very dangerous game for Wisconsin. This is a Northwestern team that if they don't lose to our Chicago State Cougars, they're a surefire top 25 team at the moment. I think Wisconsin is going to win at home, though. Kind of, my theme all show. Tough to go on the road and win, especially in conference. I think the Badgers are going to win it close. It seems like Wisconsin, whenever they have an opportunity to really step up, they never better be. Wisconsin just can't seem to blow teams out in big games, at least in my eyes. So I think they'll win this game close, especially, having Boo Buie with Northwestern. He's dangerous, as always. So I'll take them to cover that 10.5 if the number is that big. I'm going to go under 138.5, Badgers 69, Wildcats 66.
Yeah, I want to give the Badgers some respect. I think they're a legit top 10 team. They're 7-1 in quad one and quad two, one of the best teams in those top two quads this year, and they've been beating some very good teams. I was very impressed by their win last night at Ohio State. Ohio State made a run, took the lead, and Wisconsin on the road didn't flinch. They were able to come back and win that game. And then Northwestern's kind of another team like Syracuse, where all right, Syracuse is 11-4, I think. Georgia 12-3. Team like that with a very inflated record right now, but what will they look like in the thick of conference play? I think we see them slip up here. This is a big test here, and I think they're good enough to hang around, make this a game, but I think Wisconsin's going to get it done. But this is a pretty big number. I'm going to take Northwestern to cover if this is the real spread. Wisconsin 74, Northwestern 68, so Northwestern plus 10.5 and the over of 138.5. All right, we go to a Big East matchup now with St. John's at 12-4 at number 22 Creighton 12-4. St. John's has been playing awesome. 1 o'clock tip on Fox. Creighton projected to win 80-71. So we'll go Creighton minus 8.5 over under 150.5.
I'm going St. John's outright here, 78-73. Going to take the Johnnies to cover the 8.5. That might be the sell your house game of the week. And I'm going to go over 150.5 for this game. Just because, I think I said it last time we had Creighton on. I don't think Creighton is as good as their record is. There's just something about this Creighton team that, I don't trust them long term. Yes, they are at home. Yes, they have an awesome home court advantage because there's not much else to do in the middle of winter in Omaha, Nebraska. But I will be going St. John's. I think Rick Pitino really has this team. I saw St. John's play in person. They hung with UConn on the road until very late in that game. There was a lot of points where I thought UConn was going to lose, and I was going to, jump off the roof of the XL Center. Thankfully, UConn pulled that game out. But I think St. John's is a very good team, and they're going to be a team that I think we might be talking about in late March. I could see this team making a run in the tournament as well.
Yeah, Joe, you pretty much said what, for the most part, what I was going with. The Johnnies have been playing super well. I was talking last night on The Gambler, and I was saying they're a team that I'm definitely keeping an eye out for going forward. And I don't think it's a stretch to say that they could win the Big East regular season. If not, they're going to be no one's going to want to play them in that Big East tournament. I don't think that they've been to the semifinals of the Big East tournament since like 2000, I believe it is. So I think this is definitely a year that they could potentially break that. I really like the way they've been playing. I think outside of UConn, they might be the best team right now in the Big East. Super impressed by their development over the course of the first 16 games of the season. When you have Rick Pitino, you always have a chance. Creighton, though, on the other hand, they've disappointed me this year. While they're sitting at number 22 with a 12-4 record, I've watched them a handful of times, and they always leave me wanting more. It feels like they never play to their full potential. And along with Marquette, who was my national title team, they've really struggled as well, losing at home to Butler last night. So both those two teams have been struggling, and I think those were kind of the expected teams, them and UConn at the top this year. UConn really the only one in the Big East thus far living up to the hype. So I think that's really hurting the quality of the Big East. But I do think the Johnnies have a chance to they get this win. They're definitely in the top 25, but they're starting to become a team that no one wants to play. So I think the Johnnies go to Omaha and make a statement, grab a road win. I'm gonna go St. John's 80, Creighton to 77. So we'll go St. John's plus 8.5 there and the over of 150.5. All right, now we go to Kansas for number 9, Oklahoma at 13-2. At number 3, Kansas 13-2. Both teams coming off a loss. 2:00 tip on ESPN Plus. I don't know why. It was like a Big 12 Network ESPN Plus game. Why are you putting a top 10 matchup on there, Joe? Give you a chance to talk about that. But we're projecting a Kansas 71-69 win. So over under 139.5, and Kansas as a 1.5 point favorite here. Joe, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
I'm very excited for this game. I'm glad, that I have ESPN Plus so I can actually watch it. I would be pissed, if I'm out or, going to do something and I'm at a bar and I can't watch the game because it's only available to stream. I think that's a little ridiculous. But I'm going to go Kansas 79, Oklahoma 73. So I'm going to take Kansas to cover that 1.5 point spread. I'm going to go over 139.5. This was a Kansas team. They were up 35-19 with 3:45 to go in the first half against UCF on the road. A UCF team that is, this is a huge win for them in terms of their future as far as the season goes. But before the game, the win against Kansas, I did not think UCF was going to be hanging around. I still think UCF is going to end up towards the, lower half and bottom of the Big 12 this year. And that's not a shot at UCF. They just have to go into the best basketball conference, year one in the Big 12 is going to be very challenging for them, especially going on the road. I think Kansas is going to come home. I think Hunter Dickinson's going to have a big game, as much as I hate him. I think Kansas is going to just, take care of business. They're going to get a couple of calls. Any 50-50 call at Fog Allen is automatically going Kansas's way. We saw that against TCU a little while ago. And I think Oklahoma is a very good team, don't get me wrong, but if you're going to Fog Allen, I don't think you're going to win. UConn lost there, and you can make an argument that UConn's the best team in the country right now.
Whoa.
So I think you can make that argument, especially after them, all the other teams around them lost. It wouldn't be shocking. It wouldn't be shocking if UConn wins, the rest of the week. I don't know. I forget who they play off the top of my head on Saturday, but no reason why UConn can't be number one at the end of the week. But give me the Jayhawks.
St. John's is going to be number 1.
St. John's can be 2 for now. I'd be fine with that. But
yeah,
I think number 1.
They're making the leap to number 1, I think, but Monday morning.
Giants would be crazy.
Red Storm are back. I do have major questions, though, about this Kansas team. I mean, I don't know if they're that good. I think they're going to be a top 2 or 3 seed due to the power of their home court and just racking up wins. But on the road, and once we get to some neutral floors, are they going to be able to prevail? I haven't really seen that much from them this year. I think they really lack scoring outside of Hunter Dickinson, and I'm worried about their long-term ceiling because, winning the Big 12 every year is good, but Kansas is a team where their ultimate goal, their ultimate success of the season will be dictated upon how they do in March in the conference tournament and then in the NCAA tournament. So I don't know if this team's deep enough and has enough guys that can score the ball to make that Final Four run. But however, in this spot at home, coming off a loss, I think they get it done. Oklahoma, I think, is a team we're going to see regress a little bit in conference play. They're number 9 right now. It wouldn't be surprising at all to me to see them in the 20s by the start of next week after losing potentially two games in a row. But keep a close eye on this Kansas team and over this next week, Joe, and let me know if you think they have a limited long-term ceiling, just like I do. I think that Kansas fans should be a little bit worried about this squad. But I'll go Kansas 75, Oklahoma 70. So Kansas minus 1.5 and the over of 139.5. All right. Real good upstart team this year. I think exceeding some people's expectations with all the youth. That's number 6 Kentucky at 12-2. Going to Texas A&M, on the other hand, a veteran squad that's really disappointed this year, especially me. They're at 9-6, a must-win game here for them as they're 0-2 in the conference to start. 2 o'clock tip on ESPN. Haslam projects us 80-78 win for the Aggies. So we'll go A&M minus 1.5 and the over/under of 157.5.
I would love to pick A&M here. I just can't pull the trigger on it. I'm going Kentucky 81, A&M 79. I believe it's going to be close, but I'm going to take Kentucky to cover that 1.5-point spread. I'm going to go over 157.5. I mean, this is Texas A&M team 0-2 with losses, a 15-point loss at home to LSU and an 11-point loss on the road to Auburn. Really tough sledding so far for A&M in conference play. They lose this game, then they're going on the road back-to-back games against Arkansas and then LSU again, playing LSU twice real quick to start off the season for A&M. But Coy, like you said, just very disappointing so far, 9-6. They were a team a couple of weeks ago. They were as high as 21. I thought they were a little higher than 20. They were as high as 12 early in the season. They've completely fallen off since then. I hope they prove me wrong. I could see this being one of those games, you look up and all of a sudden you see Calipari getting ejected, running off the crowd, and the crowd flipping him off and everything. But I think Kentucky's going to pull this one out. I just can't trust A&M in this game.
Yeah, I think looking at this one with like the projections, I could see this wind up being a game where like Kentucky actually is favored and they don't really value the projections with the way Kentucky's been playing compared to A&M. And I don't know if I want to put a 100% declaration on it, but if A&M's an underdog in this game, there's a 90% chance they'll be the dog of the day on Saturday, just because this is such a must-win bounce-back spot for them. A lot of pressure on them, and you always say it, Joe, win. North Carolina, Duke, Kentucky, Kansas come to town. The fans are going to show out, and with an A&M team that has a lot of veterans, and people were picking them to win the SEC, like a dark horse Final Four team. They have a ton of pressure, and if they fall to 0-3 in the SEC, they might not even wind up making the tournament this year. So this is kind of a game where they can win and right the ship this year. I can see it now. 4:30, like right as NFL playoffs are kicking off, you flip right over after Texas A&M is storming the court. I think that this is a game that they win, and Kentucky has been very impressive, though. They won that game at Florida last week. I was really impressed, but we've seen it's really hard to win on the road in conference play already at the beginning of the season, and Kentucky's won 6 in a row heading into this game. I think they're going to slip up on the road here against an Aggies team that's going to try to avoid going to 0-3. So I'm going to go with Texas A&M to win this one, 75-72. So for the projection purposes, A&M minus 1.5, and I'll go under 157.5. But I think come Saturday morning that we're going to see Kentucky as the favorite in this one, and I'm going to take Texas A&M there at the plus money. All right, we go to the Mountain West now, another big Mountain West game. A lot of early games on our schedule this week, Joe, but number 19, San Diego State at 14-2, at New Mexico 13-3, at 2 o'clock tip on CBS. We talked about this for the Friday game with Nevada and Boise State, where, all right, you're one of these 5 teams out of the Mountain West that could potentially get in the tournament. You have to win these home games and protect the home court. So New Mexico 75, 72 is the projection here. New Mexico minus 2.5, over under 146.5.
Yeah, I think the Lobos going to get this done just because kind of the exact opposite of my A&M analysis. New Mexico starting off 1-2 in the Mountain West. They need a big win fast. They're 13-3 overall, but that record can only take so many in-conference losses. We saw it last year. New Mexico, with a couple weeks to go, looked like a surefire tournament team. And then they just kept taking bad loss after bad loss in conference. And then all of a sudden, they completely fell off the face of the earth, missed the tournament. I don't even know how they did in the NIT, if they even made the NIT. I think they did. They had a good enough record to make the NIT, but I don't know how they did in the NIT. The Pit in New Mexico is a great home environment. I think it was last year. Did they beat San Diego State? They beat someone at the buzzer, I remember. because it was one of those late night games. I remember being up, at school watching it. I think the Lobos are going to win this game 69-67. So I will take the Aztecs to cover that 2.5. I'm going to go under 140. Yeah, under 146.5. Yeah. Okay. Definitely going the under here. I do like the Aztecs once again. I think they're going to be fine in the long run. This is just a very tough game, and this is a big stretch for New Mexico. Their next two games, they host San Diego State and Utah State, the top two teams in the Mountain West right now, both at 19 and 20 in the top 25. So if you're New Mexico, on Wednesday, you could either be looking at, okay, we're fine, or we need to pretty much win out if we want a shot at the tournament.
We got a question here in the chat. Mara is a freshman center at UCLA. I'm not valuing anything UCLA basketball is doing right now at 6-9. Sar, he's an overseas guy. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, Joe. He's looking like the potential number one. But Aaron Bradshaw, I've talked about him a few times this year. I saw him in person for the Kentucky Penn game. Been super impressive. Is 7 foot, can run the floor, can shoot the three, can block shots. I think this is a very weak draft class. He could easily see himself in the top 5 for a Kentucky team that's built around their guards with Wagner, Reed Shepherd, Dillingham. Bradshaw is a great complementary piece because he doesn't really clog the paint up and he can shoot the ball from the outside. So I really like him. With Sar and Mara, I haven't really seen much just because playing at UCLA and they've been struggling. I haven't watched them that much. And Sar being a overseas guy, I haven't really seen much of him, obviously, as I'm paying more attention to college guys. But Aaron Bradshaw, I'm a big fan, and I think he is really the X factor for how far this Kentucky team can go this year. But in terms of this matchup, Joe, I'm going to go with New Mexico to win 76-70. I'll go New Mexico minus 2.5 over 146.5. I really believe in when you're the home team, having the ability to control the pace and control the tempo. And New Mexico is a team that wants to get up and down, score the ball, and they want this game to be played in the high 70s, low 80s. And I think the Pit, we talk about it, one of the crazier mid-major home venues in all of college hoops. Like I think that building fits like 15,000, and for a team out of the Mountain West, that's pretty special. So I'm going to go with New Mexico. I think it's a big home game, like you said. If they lose this one, they're going to have a lot of pressure on them going forward. If they're able to pull this one out, I think it kind of puts them in the driver's seat, maybe gives them some room to slip up against some of those other high-quality Mountain West teams. But this is a pretty big must-win type of spot here in the middle of January for New Mexico, and I think they're gonna show out with the crowd in this one and find a way to get it done. All right, last 2 games of the night. For Saturday, no Sunday games on this slate. We have 2 more Big 12 matchups. Number 2, Houston at 14-1, coming off a loss to Iowa State at TCU, who's 12-3. 6 o'clock tip on ESPN. Houston projected to win 69-63. So we'll go Houston minus 5.5 in the over under 131.5.
So we're going Houston 65, TCU 62. I'm going to take the under there, under 131.5, and then I'll take TCU to cover the 5.5 at home. I believe they'll keep it within that number, but I do not think they will be able to beat the Houston Cougars. Houston only allowing 50.3 points per game. TCU's offense has looked great. They played nobody in the non-conference. We've talked to them a lot already. They were close against Kansas. They ended up beating Oklahoma at home the other night. Huge win for them. I don't know if they'll be able to put 2 together back-to-back, and it's kind of, whenever you see a good offense run into a good defense, that defense typically wins that battle and wins that matchup. So that's kind of my thinking here, going with Houston, especially coming off a loss. I think they're going to, figure it out. I think they're going to suffocate the Horned Frogs, and I think it's going to be an ugly 65-62. It's not going to be, a game where you sit and you're like, wow, this is one of the greatest basketball games I've ever seen. But Houston, I think, is going to be able to get it done, win ugly, and any win on the road in conference play is huge. So give me Houston.
Yeah, when you look at TCU, they're playing with some serious momentum here. I mean, I don't know how much of that Kansas TCU game you watched, but I watched a pretty good bit of it, and I think TCU outplayed them for the most part, and you talked about it a little bit earlier, but there was like some controversial calls down the stretch. I think that the refs really took that game from TCU. And they beat Oklahoma last night, and I think they're showing people. We talked really down on them about that non-conference schedule that they had, but I think they're showing that they're better than that, and they were dominating those teams for a reason because they're a good team. They can score the ball, and I think they're a tough matchup for a lot of squads. But I was looking this up since Kelvin Sampson got hired at Houston in 2014. Houston is 44-22 after a loss. As we know, they lost at Iowa State the other night. They're a team that usually bounces back after poor performances. And if Houston didn't bury themselves, it's easy to say this, but if they didn't bury themselves and get down 14-0 the other night, I think they would have won. That was one of those games where if there was 5 more minutes, Houston was coming back and taking that. They just dug themselves in too big of a hole early. So another spot here, excuse me, with a ranked team on the road being a favorite, which we've seen a lot of upsets already this year. I could see this as another potential upset spot, but I do think Houston has the tools and the makeup to bounce back in this one and find a way to get a win at TCU. So I'm going to go Houston 75, TCU 73. So we'll take TCU to cover 5.5 and the over of 151, or excuse me, 131.5. And final game of the night on Saturday. Losing my voice here. Cincy 12-3 at Baylor 13-2, 8 o'clock on ESPN. Baylor projected to win 77-70, so we'll go Baylor minus 6.5 over under 146.5.
Yeah, I'm going Baylor here 78, Cincinnati 65. I think Cincinnati is going to get blown out in this game. I like Baylor minus 6.5. I believe I like the under 146.5 if my math is right, but as we've known with this show, I've been off a couple of times. That game against Texas was like a have-to-have it game for Cincinnati. You go on the road and beat BYU, that's great, but BYU now is already 0-2 in the Big 12. Who knows if BYU can keep up that pace from earlier in the season. You have a chance to beat Texas, who was one of the more fraudulent top 25 teams I've seen in a while in terms of like what they had done up to that point. To be there at 25 was surprising to me. You lose that game by 1. Now you got to go on the road to Baylor. Baylor, brand new arena. They've been loving it. They're one of the better, if not, top tier teams in the Big 12. They
Great
won
camera angle.
That's so bad. I haven't actually watched a full Baylor game yet, but I've seen like highlights and stuff on Twitter, and it is insane. It's like the camera guys are filming like this the whole game. It's crazy how bad the camera angle is. But I think Baylor is just going to dominate Cincinnati. Cincinnati, another team like UCF, who I think we're going to look at the end of the season and be like, yeah, that's just year 1 in the Big 12 for you. Wouldn't shock me if they finish in the bottom 4.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, them, BYU, and UCF have moved over pretty well. I thought it would take like a year or two to just start, getting Big 12 level players, Big 12 level athletes in the program. I do think Cincinnati, though, is a little bit better than given credit for right now. I think that they could be a tournament team. They'll be floating around the bubble. Losing my voice, so I'm going to keep this one short. But I got Baylor 80, Cincy 70, so I'll go Baylor minus 6.5 and the over of 146.5. I think Baylor's offense is really dangerous, and I don't think Cincinnati is going to be able to keep up with them, so I'll keep it short and sweet there. All right, that'll do it for college basketball picks and preview show for this upcoming weekend, January 12th and 13th. Nice weekend of games, mixed in with NFL Super Wildcard weekend. On our way out, Joe, give me your prediction: Eagles or Bucks on Monday night?
The Eagles will win against the Bucks. I think they're going to win pretty convincingly, as a matter of fact.
You said this about Game 7 with the Phillies too.
Did I really?
Yep.
That's then I guess you guys are screwed. But I like the Eagles against the Bucks. I don't trust Baker Mayfield. I just don't think the Bucks are that good. I think the whole NFC South sucked.
But what did the Eagles?
The Eagles aren't good either. But I think the best case, like the best team that you guys could have faced in the wild card round, like for you guys, is the Bucks. I think you guys are gonna be able to beat the Bucks, and then from there, who the hell knows? Because I don't think you guys are winning in San Francisco or Dallas. But who knows? Maybe you guys get lucky. 5, 6, and 7 all win.
Yeah,
you
we'll be hosting the Rams next week. It's my prediction.
And then host the Packers in the NFC title game. There you go.
That's where dreams are made of. All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and we'll talk next week. Eagles actually have no chance of winning, too.